The icy wind whipped across the metal rooftops of Ganymede's sprawling cityscape, carrying with it the scent of sulfur and burned ozone. Neon signs flickered weakly through the thick smog that clung to the domed city like a shroud. The sky, above, was a dull gray, the faint glow of Jupiter's storms barely visible through the pollution. Beneath this oppressive canopy, humanity had long since been reduced to shadows of their former selves, subjugated workers, outcasts, and broken dreams. The Zalith Dominion ruled with an iron fist, their towering forms patrolling every street, their unblinking eyes cameras and scanners to catch any flicker of defiance. Lena Corwin clutched her son's hand tighter as they navigated the crowded market stalls. Faces turned down, voices hushed. The boy, no older than 7, tugged curiously at the worn sleeve of his mother's jacket, his wide green eyes reflecting both wonder and fear. "Stay close, Eli," Lena whispered, scanning the crowd. Her heart pounded not just from the cold, but from the ever-present dread of the Dominion's enforcers. Eli's curiosity was dangerous. His questions, about old Earth legends, about wars, about the stars, were reckless in a world where knowledge was controlled, rewritten, sanitized. They were told humans were weak, broken, and obedient. Yet something deep inside him refused to accept that. As they passed a dimly lit relic shop, Eli's gaze caught on a discarded weapon behind cracked glass. It was a strange, angular piece. No longer functional, but a ghost of a forgotten war. He reached out instinctively, fingers brushing the cold metal. A sudden sharp voice sliced through the air. "Child! Hands off!" 2 Zalith enforcers materialized beside them like shadows given form. Tall alien figures draped in obsidian armor, their faces hidden behind angular helmets that pulsed faintly with blue light. Lena yanked Eli back, but it was too late. The boy's hand lingered too long on the relic. The enforcers grabbed him with mechanical precision. Violation of curfew and possession of forbidden artifact, one declared in a voice devoid of mercy. "No." Lena's cry shattered the muted chaos around them. "He's only a child." But the law was absolute. There was no room for mercy in the Dominion's rule. The crowd parted silently, fear etched in every face. Some avoided looking, others clenched fists beneath tattered sleeves. Human voices had long since been silenced, but in that moment an unspoken grief rippled through the onlookers. The enforcers hauled Eli toward the detention center, a towering black monolith at the city's edge where dissent was extinguished, before it could take root. Lena followed, desperation burning her lungs. She tried to bargain, to plead, but her words bounced off cold metal and unmoving helmets. The cold cells inside the detention center were stripped of light and warmth. Eli sat on a hard bench, eyes wide but silent. Lena kissed his forehead once, trembling, before guards pulled her away. "You will see him at trial," they said. But Lena knew the Dominion's justice was a farce, swift and cruel. That night, in the small, cramped quarters where she was held, Lena's mind raced. The Zalith had broken countless worlds, silenced entire species, yet here, within the walls of human captivity, something flickered alive. It was the stubborn ember of rebellion, fueled by a mother's fierce love and a son's innocent hope. Outside, the city slept under the watchful gaze of its alien masters, but beneath that surface, whispers began. Stories passed quietly from one hidden human to another, tales of a boy whose curiosity was his crime, a mother who would not bend, and a spark ready to ignite a galaxy. The tyranny had lasted for ages, but it would not last forever. Because sometimes, even in the darkest prisons, a single spark could light a wildfire. The morning sun struggled to pierce through the thick smog, casting a pale, sickly light over the plaza. A crowd had gathered, subdued but restless, humans and a handful of alien onlookers alike, brought here not by choice but by the iron will of the Zalith Dominion. Lena's hands were bound behind her back, rough cuffs biting into her skin as she was shoved forward by 2 enforcers. Her eyes never left the small figure standing at the center of the plaza, her son, Eli. He was on his knees, surrounded by armored soldiers, his wrists shackled with glowing restraints that pulsed faintly with cold energy. Despite the fear etched deep into his face, there was something else. A stubborn spark. The same spark Lena saw every time she looked into his eyes. Defiance. The Zalith magistrate, a tall figure clad in ceremonial armor that shimmered like liquid obsidian, stepped forward. His voice boomed over the silent crowd in perfect common. Eli Corwin stands accused of rebellion, possession of forbidden weapons, and incitement to sedition, he announced. The laws of the Dominion are clear. The penalty is death. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Mothers shielded their children's eyes. Some alien species whispered amongst themselves, eyes flicking nervously toward the human gathering. Lena's heart shattered. No, you can't. He's just a child. But her words fell on deaf ears. The magistrate raised a hand, signaling the executioners. Eli's gaze locked with his mother's one last time. No tears, only fierce, unyielding courage. Then, with brutal swiftness, the sentence was carried out. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the boy collapsed, a single precise strike ending a life barely begun. Lena screamed, a raw, wrenching sound that cut through the plaza like a blade. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, as guards dragged her away. In the hours that followed, the city seemed to hold its breath. The streets, usually noisy with forced labor and mechanical hum, were eerily quiet. Behind closed doors and in shadowed alleys, whispers spread. The execution was meant to be a warning, a message that resistance was futile, that the Dominion's rule was absolute, but instead it ignited something far more dangerous. Lena's disappearance was reported almost immediately. Some said she'd been broken, her spirit crushed by grief. Others whispered that she had vanished into the black market, joining those who refused to bow. Among the scattered human enclaves across the outer colonies, Eli's death became a rallying cry. In a cramped, dimly lit room deep in the Kuiper Belt, a group of humans watched the smuggled video of the execution again and again. Lena's anguished scream echoed through the speakers, and something fierce and raw stirred in their hearts. One by one they began to speak, not in despair, but in defiance. A former soldier slammed his fist on the table. We can't keep hiding. We have to fight. A hacker nodded grimly. The Dominion's tech isn't invincible. We can turn their own weapons against them. A scientist, once a collaborator, wiped sweat from his brow. Eli was a child, yes, but his death is the spark. We are the flame. Meanwhile, the Dominion scrambled to maintain order. Patrols intensified, curfews tightened. Propaganda flooded every channel, warnings of chaos, of rebellion, of human savagery. But the message only fueled the fire. Humans began secret meetings, training in hidden bunkers and abandoned asteroid mines. They began to remember their history, not as defeated victims, but as warriors, explorers, survivors. Lena, alive and more determined than ever, moved like a ghost among them. She was no longer just a grieving mother. She was the face of a movement. Quiet, fierce, unyielding. She carried with her one mission, to ensure Eli's death was not in vain. That night, under the cold glow of distant stars, Lena stood on the edge of a crater where the first fires of rebellion would soon be kindled. The tyranny that had lasted for ages was beginning to crack, and humanity once again was ready to roar. In the darkest reaches of the Kuiper Belt, far beyond the prying eyes of the Zalith Dominion, a hidden network of human outcasts and rebels stirred to life. Deep inside a hollowed asteroid, their secret sanctuary hummed with energy, a flicker of hope amid the cold void. Lena Corwin stood before a ragtag assembly of humans, faces worn by hardship but burning with determination. Screens displayed the grainy footage of Eli's execution, his last moments replayed endlessly as a somber reminder of what was lost and what could be gained. A silence fell over the room. Then, slowly, one voice broke it. This cannot stand, said Jarek, a former soldier whose missing arm was a testament to past battles. They think we're weak, broken, but they're wrong. They don't know what it means to be human. Around the room, nods and murmurs of agreement followed. Years of oppression had not erased the fire within these survivors. It had only buried it, waiting for a spark. Lena's voice was steady, cold with resolve. Eli's death was their mistake. They executed a child hoping to break us. Instead, they've lit a fire that will burn through their empire. A scientist tapped on a holodisplay, showing schematics stolen from Zalith technology. We've been reverse engineering their weapons, their AI systems. Soon we'll have the means to fight back, faster, smarter, deadlier. A hacker named Kira grinned. And we have the element of surprise. The Dominion doesn't expect us to organize. They think humans are docile. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Meanwhile, deep within the Dominion's command center on Callisto, alarms blared. The Zalith High Council gathered around. A sleek table faces pale beneath their scales and armor. The humans are stirring, intoned Vral, the Dominion's warlord. Their networks have been compromised. They have new weapons. We must crush this rebellion before it spreads. But not all were convinced. We have ruled for thousands of years, hissed another counselor. One child's death cannot undo that legacy. Vral's eyes narrowed. That child's death is a spark. We ignore it at our peril. Back in the asteroid sanctuary, Lena moved among the rebels, her presence a steady force. She taught them not just to fight, but to remember. The stories of humanity's resilience, its triumphs, its flaws. She shared tales of Earth's wars, of heroes who rose against impossible odds. She reminded them that humans had survived plagues, ice ages, and extinction-level threats, and had always emerged stronger. This is our inheritance, she said. Not just weapons or technology, but spirit. They may have taken our worlds, but they cannot take our will. Outside the sanctuary, the cold blackness of space stretched endlessly. But within, a network was growing. Secret transmissions humming through encrypted channels. Whispers of revolt traveling from one human enclave to another. Word reached. A battered colony on Mars, where a small band of miners and scientists began stockpiling weapons salvaged from Dominion wreckage. On the edges of the Orion Nebula, freighters crewed by humans began quietly rerouting supplies to rebel outposts. Each act, no matter how small, became a thread in a growing tapestry of resistance. One night, Lena stood before a digital map of the galaxy, lights blinking across star systems where humans still lived in fear or defiance. She knew the path ahead was perilous. The Dominion's power was vast, and their cruelty limitless. But something deep inside her whispered that this was only the beginning. Her voice, low and steady, echoed in the quiet room. They think they've silenced us. But Eli's death was the beginning of our reckoning. We are no longer their subjects. We are their reckoning. The rebels around her nodded, eyes shining with a mixture of fear and fierce hope. Together, they prepared to take the first steps toward reclaiming their freedom. Beyond the asteroid's surface, a single flare burst into the void, a signal sent across the stars. It was a call to arms, a declaration of war. The flame had ignited. Darkness cloaked the edge of the asteroid belt as the Vow's small fleet gathered in silence. Human ships, salvaged and rebuilt from Dominion wreckage, hovered like predators in the void, sleek and deadly despite their patchwork origins. The crew aboard each vessel wore faces hardened by years of oppression, but tonight those faces burned with something fiercer: resolve. Lena Corwin stood on the bridge of the flagship Embersong, eyes fixed on the holographic map hovering before her. A convoy of Zalith supply ships heavy with weapons and reinforcements was due to pass through a nearby sector in hours. It was a perfect target, well guarded, yet slow and predictable. This is more than a raid, Lena told her commanders. It's a message. They killed Eli to silence us. Tonight we roar back. The crew responded with quiet nods. No grand speeches. They didn't need them. The time for words was over. The convoy slipped through space, unaware of the shadow, trailing behind. Suddenly, Blaring alarms shattered the hum of engines. Hostiles detected multiple signatures on an intercept course, a young pilot shouted. The Vow's fighters surged forward, weaving through debris fields with practiced precision. Plasma beams lanced through the void, ripping into the lead supply ship. Explosions bloomed like stars in reverse, painting the darkness with fiery blossoms. Inside the convoy's command center, panic erupted. The Zalith captain barked orders, but the Vow's strike was swift and coordinated. Fighters darted in and out, disabling engines and weapons with surgical strikes. Lena watched from the bridge, heart pounding. This was more than a battle. It was the beginning of the end for Dominion complacency. As the fight raged, a squadron of human commandos teleported aboard one of the crippled supply ships. They moved like shadows, neutralizing guards and sabotaging critical systems. Their mission to capture data cores containing shipment manifests and coordinates of Dominion installations. Among them was Jarek, the soldier with the missing arm, whose grit and experience made him a legend in these covert operations. He moved silently, every breath calculated. Package secured, Jarek whispered over comms. The Vow's fleet retreated before Dominion reinforcements could arrive, leaving behind burning wreckage and chaos. Back on the Ember Song, Lena watched. The message they'd carved into the hull of the largest supply ship before retreat. You killed a child. We are the consequence. The words were simple, but their weight carried far beyond the battlefield. The Dominion was stunned. Vral, the warlord, paced in his chamber. A small band of humans has struck at the heart of our supply lines. He snarled. This is unacceptable. The High Council convened an emergency session. Some urged brutal reprisals. Others feared the spark had become a flame. We must crush them, Vrail declared. Show all species that defiance means annihilation. But the brutal crackdowns only fanned the flames. Human colonies, once silent under the Dominion's boot, erupted in protests and sabotage. Sympathetic alien species began to offer clandestine support to the Vow, providing supplies and intelligence. Lena's message spread like wildfire. The humans were no longer meek victims. They were a reckoning. In the hidden asteroid sanctuary, celebrations were muted but fierce. The first strike was a victory, a proof that years of oppression could be undone by courage and cunning. Lena addressed the rebels, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. This is only the beginning. They underestimated us because they forgot what it means to fight with everything you have. She looked around at the faces illuminated by flickering screens. We fight for Eli, for every child they have crushed, for a future where no one lives in fear. Outside, space stretched infinitely, indifferent and cold, but in this small corner of the galaxy, a spark had grown into a blaze. The Vow was rising. The hollowed asteroid that served as the Vow's sanctuary thrummed with activity. But beneath the buzz of engines and whispered planning, a tension lingered like a storm cloud ready to break. The rebellion was growing, but so were the cracks. Within it, Lena Corwin stood near a holotable where representatives from several alien species hovered hesitantly. Some tall and sleek with glimmering scales, others short and bulbous with many eyes. Their presence was a fragile symbol of hope. Enemies of the Dominion reluctantly united. We can no longer fight alone, Lena said firmly. Our strength lies in unity. Yet the room was divided. Among the gathered aliens, suspicion simmered, just beneath polite nods. You humans speak boldly, said Tyrax, a diplomat from the Drelketh, whose venomous tongue was famed across the outer systems. But your kind brought destruction to other worlds in the past. Why should we trust you now? A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Lena met Tyrax's gaze evenly. Because we have no choice but to change. Eli's death opened our eyes to the true face of tyranny. Together, we can end it. The Dralketh diplomat's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing further. Meanwhile, beneath the fragile alliance, another threat lurked, one born from desperation and fear. Among the Vow's ranks was a man named Kale, once a loyal Dominion collaborator who switched sides when the rebellion began. Yet his loyalties were questioned. One night, Kira, the hacker, intercepted encrypted communications from Kale's device to an unknown recipient. Her heart raced as she decrypted the message, a warning to the Dominion about an upcoming attack. She brought the evidence to Lena. "We have a traitor," Kira whispered, eyes haunted. "Kale is selling us out." Lena's jaw clenched. Betrayal was a poison that could kill the rebellion faster than any Dominion weapon. Despite the internal threats, the vow pressed forward. Lena negotiated terms with the various alien factions, sharing intelligence, coordinating strikes, and building a fragile trust that was both necessary and dangerous. On a remote moon orbiting a gas giant, she met with the enigmatic Kelzar, leader of the Thranics, a fierce warrior race long enslaved by the Dominion. "Our people have suffered centuries," Kelzar said, his voice a rumble like distant thunder. "We fight for freedom, but we do not forget the cost. You humans must prove your worth." Lena nodded. "We will. Eli's death is our promise." Yet as alliances strengthened, the Dominion's hunt for Lena intensified. The warlord Viral unleashed his elite trackers, Zalith assassins known for their relentless pursuit. Lena narrowly escaped an ambush on a supply convoy, saved only by the quick actions of her closest guards. But the message was clear. The Dominion wanted her dead. Back. In the sanctuary, paranoia grew. Meetings were held behind locked doors. Kale was confronted but denied the charges. The Vow's leaders debated harshly. Trust was a fragile currency. Lena decided to give Kale one chance to prove himself, but kept him under watch. "We cannot afford to lose focus," she told her commanders, "but we cannot destroy ourselves from within." As the rebellion prepared its next move, a daring strike on a Dominion communications hub, the fragile alliances were tested again. Trax approached Lena quietly. "If your plan fails, it will set us all back decades. The Dralketh will not follow a lost cause." Lena met his challenge with quiet steel. "It will not fail. For Eli. For all our futures." In the dim light, a fragile hope endured, a hope born from shared pain and mutual necessity. But beneath the surface, old wounds and grudges simmered. The path to freedom was not just fought in battle, it was fought in trust, betrayal, and the hard choices that defined who they would become. The Vow readied for war. Lena knew that the greatest battle might not be against the Dominion, but against the shadows within. The cold silence of space pressed against the hull of the Embersong as it drifted just beyond the Dominion's communications array on Ceres. Inside, the Rebel Command Center was a hive of nervous energy. Maps, encrypted transmissions, and tactical plans flickered across every screen. Lena Corwin paced the length of the bridge, her mind racing. The Vow's next strike was their most ambitious yet, to cripple the Dominion's ability to coordinate across the outer colonies. But it wasn't just the physical danger that gnawed at her. It was the poison of doubt and betrayal growing within. Kael, once trusted, was under constant watch. Yet Lena couldn't shake the feeling that shadows moved behind his calm facade. His explanations for suspicious actions were plausible, but plausible wasn't enough when every mistake could mean death. Late that night, Lena convened a secret meeting with her most trusted advisors, Jarek, Kira, and Tyrax, whose presence was a reminder of the fragile alliances they were trying to hold. "We can't afford another leak," Lena said, voice low but firm. "Kale has one last chance. If he betrays us again, he's out." Kira nodded grimly, fingers tapping rapidly on her terminal. "I'm tightening surveillance. Every message, every movement, nothing slips through." Trax's eyes gleamed, with a mix of suspicion and caution. "Trust is a luxury none of us can afford, but unity is our only weapon." Meanwhile, Kale sat alone in his quarters, staring out at the swirling void beyond the asteroid's surface. His thoughts were a tempest. He had made choices in the past to survive, choices he now regretted. His betrayal had not been for greed or malice, but a desperate attempt to protect those he still cared about. His family, trapped deep within Dominion territory. But as he listened to the whispers of rebellion growing louder, a part of him yearned for redemption. The night before the strike, Lena visited Cale's quarters. The door hissed open, and he looked up, eyes wary. "I'm giving you this chance because Eli deserved better," she said quietly. "Not just from the Dominion, but from us. Prove that you're with us." Cale swallowed hard. "I will. For Eli. For all of us." The strike unfolded under the cover of darkness. Embersong and its fleet slipped through the void, cloaked in stealth fields. Fighters darted toward the Dominion's communications array, a sprawling network of satellites and relay stations orbiting Ceres. Explosions bloomed as plasma torches severed antennae and data nodes. Hackers infiltrated firewalls, scrambling signals and scrambling Dominion responses, but amid the chaos, a trap snapped shut. Cale's betrayal revealed a hidden security protocol, and Dominion reinforcements surged through the communication blackout to trap the rebels. The battle turned desperate. Jarek led the rear guard, buying time for the fleet to retreat. Fighters were lost, ships crippled. Explosions shook the Embersong as Dominion boarding pods latched on. Lena fought to maintain control, directing evacuations and coordinating defenses. The pain of betrayal burned in her chest, fueling her fury. In the heat of battle, Cale faced Lena in the command center. "I had no choice," he pleaded. "They have my family. I did it to save them." Lena's eyes blazed. "You betrayed all of us, and for what? A chance to survive? We're fighting for a future where no one lives in fear." Her words struck him like a blow. In that moment, something shifted. Cale made a choice not just to survive, but to stand with the rebellion. He threw himself into the defense, fighting off Dominion borders alongside the rebels. His actions saved countless lives, but the wound of his betrayal would not heal overnight. After the battle, the Embersong limped back to Sanctuary, battered but alive. Lena stood before her weary crew, voice resolute despite the loss. "We were betrayed, yes, but we survived, we learn, we grow stronger." She looked toward Cale, who stood silently among them. "Trust must be earned, but our cause is greater than any one of us." The flame of rebellion still burned bright, but the shadows within reminded them all that freedom demanded more than courage. It demanded sacrifice, trust, and the will to face even the darkest parts of themselves. The days after the failed strike were heavy with silence, broken only by the hum of repairs and the quiet murmurs of reflection. The Embersong floated in the shadow of the asteroid sanctuary, battered but defiant. Its crew moved with a mix of exhaustion and determination, the rebellion's pulse still beating strong. Lena Corwin stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the swirling cosmos. Each distant star was a world waiting to be freed, a future stolen by the Dominions. Tyranny. Eli's memory was a burning beacon, lighting the path forward despite the shadows of betrayal and loss, but the cost of survival weighed heavily on her. Jarek approached, his face worn but resolute. "The Dominion is tightening its grip. Their fleets are mobilizing. They'll come for us, all of us." Lena nodded. "We expected no less. We've awakened something they never thought possible. Now they see us as a threat, and they will act accordingly." The Council of Outer Worlds, a clandestine alliance of alien factions who had so far watched the rebellion with cautious eyes, sent envoys to the asteroid sanctuary. Their leader, High Chancellor Marek, was a towering figure draped in shimmering robes, his eyes sharp and calculating. "We have observed your actions," Marek began, voice calm but firm. "Your rebellion threatens the fragile balance we've maintained for centuries." Lena met his gaze steadily. "The balance you speak of is one of oppression. We fight not just for humans, but for every species under the Dominion's yoke." Marek's expression flickered. "Your passion is admirable but reckless. The Dominion is vast. To confront it is to invite annihilation." Lena's reply was unwavering. "Then we will face annihilation with open eyes. We fight because we must." The council deliberated, and though some envoys whispered doubts, others pledged secret support. The war was no longer humanity's alone, but the Dominion's response was swift and brutal. Vral, the warlord, unleashed a new weapon, the Shadow. Talon's elite strike team specialized in assassination and sabotage. Their first mission: to capture or kill Lena Corwin. The Embersong's alarms screamed one night as boarding pods struck the sanctuary's defenses. The crew rallied, but the Talons moved with ruthless precision, infiltrating the base with deadly stealth. In the chaos, Lena was nearly caught, escaping only through a narrow maintenance shaft, her heart pounding with adrenaline and fear. She emerged on the other side, breath ragged but undeterred. "This war isn't just fought with guns and ships," she told her closest guards. "It's fought with will, and ours is unbreakable." Meanwhile, whispers of rebellion spread beyond the asteroid belt. On a mining colony in the Outer Rim, workers sabotaged Dominion machinery. In hidden spaceports, smugglers rerouted supplies to rebel cells. And across dozens of planets, humans and allied species began to rise in quiet defiance. The spark that Eli's death had ignited now threatened to become an uncontrollable blaze. In the Sanctuary's command room, tensions simmered. Kira, monitoring, Dominion communications, reported troubling news. "The Dominion is deploying a massive fleet to quarantine the outer colonies. They're preparing for total war." Jarek clenched his fists. "We need to strike first, before they can crush us." Lena weighed the risks. "We're not ready for all-out war, not yet. We need allies, and we need to be smart." Her eyes locked with Tyrax, who had grown from skeptic to trusted strategist. "We must find a way to turn their strength against them." As the Embersong prepared for a daring mission to intercept Dominion reinforcements, Lena allowed herself a rare moment of quiet. She thought of Eli, a boy who never got to grow up, whose death had set the galaxy aflame. Her voice was a whisper against the vastness of space. "For you, Eli, we will win." Outside the asteroid, stars shimmered cold and distant, but within the heart of the rebellion, a rising storm gathered strength. The Dominion had awakened a force they could no longer contain, and humanity's vengeance was only beginning. The vast silence of space was shattered by the thunder of engines as the Embersong and its fleet surged toward the Dominion's quarantine fleet. Stars streaked past, each pulse of the ship's thrusters a heartbeat closer to destiny. Lena Corwin stood on the bridge, her eyes steely, her mind sharp. This was the moment they had fought for, the chance to break the chains that had bound humanity and its allies for centuries. The cost would be high, the stakes higher. Beside her, Jarek tightened his grip on the console. "They've doubled their fleet since the last skirmish. This will be the fiercest battle yet." Lena nodded. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for every child stolen, every world crushed. For Eli." The fleets collided in a cosmic storm of fire and fury. Plasma blasts tore through the darkness, shields flared and shattered, and ships danced on the edge of annihilation. Fighters weaved in deadly ballet, their pilots' lives hanging on razor-thin margins. Amid the chaos, Lena's fleet targeted the Dominion's flagship, the heart of their command. The Embersong pierced through enemy lines, dodging torrents of fire. Lena's voice rang out, calm but commanding. "Prepare boarding teams. This ends here." Boarding pods launched into the enemy ship, silent and swift. Lena led the charge, moving through corridors stained with battle scars and flickering lights. Deep within the ship's core, they confronted Vral, the Dominion warlord. His scaled form was imposing, but in his eyes burned a flicker of fear, the fear of a ruler whose reign was ending. "You think your rebellion can defeat us?" Vral snarled. "We are eternal." Lena stepped forward, unwavering. "Your eternity ends today. You ruled with fear. We fight with hope." The clash was brutal. Vral's strength was immense, but Lena's fury and resolve were fiercer. Their battle shook the ship, echoing through the hull. With a final, desperate strike, Lena disarmed Vral and stood over him. "This ends now." She raised her weapon, but instead of delivering the fatal blow, she lowered it. "Your tyranny lasted ages, but a child's death lit a fire you could never extinguish." Back on the Embersong, the battle outside raged, but the Dominion's command faltered. Vral's defeat sent shockwaves through their fleet, and one by one, ships began to surrender or retreat. In the sanctuary, a broadcast rippled across star systems. Lena's voice, clear and resolute, echoed in every home. We are free. The Dominion's grip has been broken. This victory is for Eli, for every soul who dared to dream of freedom. The road ahead is long, but together, we will build a future where no child dies under tyranny. The galaxy stirred. Planets once shackled by fear celebrated the dawn of a new era. Old grudges would take time to heal. Alliances needed nurturing, but the spark had become an inferno. Lena returned to the observation deck, the stars no longer distant points but beacons of hope. Beside her, Jarek smiled, the weight of battle easing from his shoulders. For Eli, Lena whispered again. For all of us, Jarek replied. Their tyranny had lasted ages, but in the death of a single child, humanity found its vengeance, and in that vengeance, its salvation. The stars awaited.